Hello.
Hi. Hello.
Hello.
Sorry about that.
No worries. We're glad you're able to make it.
Yeah, good to be here.
All right. So we can go ahead and get started then. What do you think, Sean?
Yeah.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to our June edition of our Self Advocates of Indiana Issues Forum. We're here today with Jeff Mohler of Special Olympics Indiana to talk about Special Olympics and their programming and how it fits in with self-advocacy. And we're really excited to have you here today, Jeff.
Well, it's certainly good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes. So can you tell us a bit about Special Olympics as a worldwide organization and how Special Olympics Indiana fits into that?
Sure. Maybe a little bit of the easier part is to go back to the beginning. So in 1968, Special Olympics started off with the huge games in Chicago, Illinois. At the time, they weren't necessarily world games, but there were athletes from the United States and Canada at Soldier Field in Chicago. There was actually still back in those days a track that went around the outside of the football field, between the football field and the spectator stands. And we also built an above ground swimming pool on the site, on the field. And if you were to watch some of the early videos of especially the swim meet, you would see individuals in white suits every so often on both sides of the pool, the entire length of the pool, because back in those days, it was common knowledge, let's say, thought that people with intellectual disabilities, once placed in water, would sink to the bottom. That was the going thought back then. But it was really brought about by some people within a university setting with the recreation department down at Southern Illinois in Carbondale, along with an intern with the Chicago Parks Department, and then with help from Mrs. Shriver, Eunice Kennedy Shriver. Those games were held in July of '68. In addition to the Canadians, there were 80 athletes from Indiana that went. They were led by two professors from Indiana State University, Dr. Judy Campbell and Dr. Tom Songster, who were with the College of Education with Indiana State. Those athletes were also joined by various volunteer coaches. And in fact, when we celebrated our 50th in Indiana, we celebrated with an athlete, Scott Wilson, who was part of those original games and still participates up in Lake County. Frank Bison. Frank was a college intern himself when he worked for the Parks Department and helped put on the games. And then Lori Wysick is a longtime coach of ours, and she was one of the first coaches, and she was at those first games. So what happened is that as those Hoosiers came back from 1968, they said, "Hey, that was fantastic. This has a benefit ongoing. It shouldn't just be a one-time thing." So they came back and actually started Special Olympics Indiana. 1969, we held our first games here in Indiana, and we actually didn't run down the track, but we had track events. We actually competed at the old Bush Stadium in downtown Indianapolis, the home of the Indianapolis Indians. Most of the races were out in the outfield grass and some of the field events as well. Not very sophisticated back then, but at the time, anything better than nothing was a step in the right direction. But we oftentimes say, though, that in 1969, Special Olympics Indiana was created as a sports organization for people with intellectual disabilities. And while we've grown in our nature, while we've grown in the number of athletes served, as we've grown with more sports and more programming, the significant change since '69 to today is that we're no longer doing things for people with intellectual disabilities. We're actually doing them with people with intellectual disabilities. And in fact, our hope is that the next generation of Special Olympics will be led by people with intellectual disabilities. So the difference of the prepositions in those statements is significant to us, and we want to continue to move in that direction. But in '69, sports only, but today we have health and fitness programming. We have walking clubs. We have school programming. We have disability awareness programs. We have inclusion activities for schools of all ages, K through 12. We have an advocacy program and a leadership program for our athletes. And kind of the next venture is something called Unified Leadership, which I can share more information later in the presentation here. But and by the time we got to 2019, we started off with 80 people in 69. And by 2019, 50 years later, we were up to 18,200. COVID has significantly reduced those numbers, specifically because our athletes had to stay at home, of course. And while we tried to do virtual challenges, we couldn't quite reach everybody because I think there's some technology obstacles in place. A lot of our athletes don't have access to computers, smartphones, emails, or anything that could keep them connected other than in person, but we still tried our best. And now that we're coming out of this dark cave called COVID, it's going to take us a little while to get back up and running, but we certainly think that by the end of this year or next year, we'll be back to pre-COVID participation. So we are on our way back.
That's great. So I know you guys just had your summer games for Special Olympics. You want to tell us a bit about how those went? And
Well,
what sports are done in the summer?
Yeah, so we annually we're at Indiana State University and spill over to other parts of the city, including Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology. And our very first games in Terre Haute were in 1970, so our second year in existence. We moved to Terre Haute, primarily because we were started by two professors at Indiana State. We've been there, other than COVID and a couple other years, every one of our summer games since 1970 have been on the campus of Indiana State University. So this year was quite different. The campuses were both open to us, and while we had COVID protocols, we had about 1,200 athletes who participated over the 3-day weekend. Our usual numbers are 2,800, so we were about 40% of where we normally are. But I think that was a pretty good number for us to come back post-COVID as one of our first events post-COVID. I think it was good to kind of start smaller. But what we did was we split the games into 3 days, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, and athletes only came one of those days. So while we had 1,200 over the entire weekend, at any one time we only had 400 competing. And then within those 400, we had upwards of 6 different sports taking place at the same time. So even that 400 was greatly reduced as they were spread across campus. We had a virtual opening ceremonies that we recorded the week before and then showed on our Facebook Live page on Thursday night. And again, so that we didn't have any large in-person gatherings. And in fact, for meals, we delivered the meals to the athletes and coaches at the venues. Nobody went to the dining hall, again, to reduce the large crowds. So I think we did a pretty good job. Even though it was 40% of the people that we normally have come and compete, it sure felt like it was twice the amount of work for us. So we made it work, though. And so I think we're, again, coming out of COVID, I think we've got a good indication based upon vaccinations, based upon virus numbers that the state government sends to us, and the fact that we were able to put games on in person. I feel pretty confident that we'll have a near return to normalcy by the time we get to our fall sports season.
Great. Well, you spoke a bit about self-advocacy and leadership opportunities through Special Olympics. Do you want to talk a bit about how, self-advocacy and the Special Olympics programming go together and the different leadership opportunities that are offered through Special Olympics Indiana?
Yeah, absolutely. Our athlete leadership initiative really is 3 different parts to it. Part one, and there's really no starting point other than either one of the first 2 places. Where we first started in the late 90s was Athlete Leadership University, where we took athlete leaders who showed potential or had a desire to grow in their leadership skills, we did some leadership training with them at Athlete Leadership University. It's a weekend. We do it 2 weekends a year, in which on a Saturday and Sunday, athlete leaders join us for the entire weekend. We usually start them off with an introduction class. And let me see if I can pull up some information to share with everybody.
That'd be great, yeah.
To show, and I apologize, I should have had this up and ready.
This is a good time, actually, while Jeff's working on that, to let our audience know, if you haven't joined us on one of our previous issues forums. In this webinar, you can ask questions either by typing them into the chat box. You can type them into the Q&A chat box, which is just another option. If you move your mouse around on your screen, a little toolbar will come up at the bottom of your screen. One of those has 2 little quote bubbles, kind of like the SAI logo. It says Q&A underneath it. And one is just the single chat bubble that says chat. You can use either of those to type in a question, or when we get to the Q&A section at the end of the forum, you can also raise your hand, and I can see that and promote you to a panelist, so we'll be able to see you and you can ask Jeff your questions in person. So if you think of a question and you want to type it out, feel free to go ahead and do that at any point. Otherwise, we'll have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation.
So hopefully you can see this. This is kind of a curriculum page for Athlete Leadership University, and it kind of helps athletes kind of work their way through. We have 7 different majors, but what each athlete starts off with is our Introduction to Athlete Leadership class. And we have to keep in mind that some of our athletes don't believe in themselves to be leaders, or they didn't know that there were options for athletes to be anything other than competitor. So one of the main things that we do in the introduction course is, and one of the things that the athletes will walk away with is a personal mission statement. So they'll go through the whole weekend, and we'll sit there and help them devise a personal mission statement. But that mission statement is also not just for that class. We hope that they will, as they go through other classes or as they go through their Special Olympics experience, but also all things that happen to them outside of Special Olympics should factor into their mission statement. So as they accomplish certain goals, the mission statement should change, of course. So not only are we working with new athletes on the mission statement, we also take a look at that mission statement with our veteran athlete leaders to make sure it's still up to date, helping them to rewrite it if they need to. A new class for us is Understanding Leadership. It kind of talks about basic principles of leadership that we are working with our international office in Washington, D.C. in this new 2nd tier class called Understanding. And then from those 2 classes, we help our athletes come up with what one of their 7 majors are. And you see the 7 majors listed here. From communication, that's how to give a public speech. From events, how to plan and manage events. From governance, that's serving on committees and boards. Health and fitness, sports. Sports is kind of on the coaching side of things, how to become a coach. Technology, whether it's PowerPoint or social media or things like that. And then visual arts. We also have devised a course in arts and making sure that our athletes can have a wide range. We do want to keep in mind that when it comes to leadership, we often think of leadership in wrong terms. I was a high school cross-country and track coach for a while, and team captains. If the team captains were selected by the team, they tended to be the senior, the best athlete, or the most popular, or some combination. That's not leadership at all. You don't have to be the oldest to be the leader. You don't have to be the best at something to be the leader. And you don't have to be the most outgoing, outspoken person to be the leader. Any of us can be leaders. And what we found is through our visual arts major in particular, but all of them, is that some of our introverts some of those athletes who are introverted kind of find their little place in this whole thing called athlete leadership when it comes to visual arts. And then we always end the class with a leadership capstone. So it takes all the classes that you've taken in the previous weekends at Athlete Leadership University, and you come and do one last class. And the project that you have to do is pretty significant. So, but each of the classes that we also teach, though, it's not just you show up to the weekend, you sit there and you get credit for it. You also have to do practicum. It's some projects or work that you have to do after taking the class to earn the credit for the class. So that's Athlete Leadership University. Normally it's held in April, 1 weekend in April, 1 week in October. What we did with COVID was we started teaching some of the classes through a Zoom setting or online setting. It works well for some classes, but not all. We think that we'll continue to offer some of these classes through Zoom, even when we go back to a world free of COVID, or at least a much more manageable COVID levels. For our in-person instruction, that takes place at Butler University. So we're there the entire weekend. Our athletes, if they need to stay overnight, stay in a near local hotel. And then 2 great days on Butler University's campus where we get to hang out with all the Bulldogs there. So that's Athlete Leadership University.
So it's not at the seminar place anymore?
The seminar, the actual building of the seminar is the seminary. It was purchased by Butler, so it's actually owned by Butler University now. So Christian Theological Seminary is still there, although I think they only use about half the building. But we found Jordan Hall to be a better location. That's where we currently are right now, because the classrooms are much closer together. The seminary is a pretty spread out place. Jordan Hall is a little bit closer. Plus, it's close to the dining hall there on campus.
That's great. That seems like a. Oh, I'm sorry, Sean.
Because that's where I went when I done the leadership training. I was a coach for a while.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the other thing, though, that is in particular interest for us when it comes to athlete leadership, though, is that our instructions our instructors. Usually we have one person with an intellectual disability, one of our athletes, who has taken the class and graduated from the university setting. But then also we have somebody without an intellectual disability. So we do the instruction as a unified pair as well.
So it sounds like a very, very great, really cool program and a well set up program. What are some of the outcomes you're hoping to see from the Athlete Leadership University? Where are you hoping that those athletes will go? Are you hoping to incorporate them more into the Special Olympics Indiana leadership decision-making structures and that sort of thing?
Yes. I think the ultimate goal for all of this, and I think it's going to take, it's kind of a pyramid. You need a lot of width of this pyramid to be able to grow the pyramid tall. But I often tell people that I'm the president and CEO for Special Olympics Indiana, but it's not my organization. The organization belongs to our athletes. I'm the temporary caretaker. That's all I am. And why is it temporary? Because I think my ultimate hope would be that at some point in time, if I'm here long enough, and if not, then my predecessor will be here. My successor will be here long enough that eventually on down the line, an athlete leader will become the president and CEO for Special Olympics Indiana. Not in a token role at all, but in a role that's legitimate. The person's been trained in particular to be able to handle the role, but also has the authority from the standpoint that it's their program. They know what other athletes need or want from the program because they are true representatives of the athletes that they're serving. So I think that's the ultimate goal. In the meantime, though, for us to get there, we have to raise the voices of our athletes, and we're doing that through athlete leadership councils. So at the state level, one of our athlete leaders, Brian Glick of Tippecanoe County, Lafayette, he came to our board of directors and requested that our board changed the bylaws to establish a new committee of the board of directors, at the time called an Athlete Input Council, but now has been changed to an Athlete Leadership Council. We do have 2 athletes on the board of directors right now, and they would be the leaders of the council. The council would be comprised of county leaders who are athlete leaders who come and get together a couple times each year to make recommendations on behalf of athletes across the state on ways to improve the program, either grow the program in quantity or enhance the program in terms of quality. And through the athlete leadership councils, we hope to be able to grow and give athletes a voice, and then also a mechanism by which to hold the rest of us accountable. We have, hence, since that first start, we have now made athlete leadership councils mandatory for all of our local programs. We haven't implemented that yet because our board of directors just approved that change, which was also requested by the Indiana Athlete Leadership Council. And so we'll be, over the next 18 months, implementing that change to make sure that all of our local programs establish a county athlete leadership council. And so that every county, every place where our athletes are, they have a voice in how we make decisions in the state of Indiana. Through that and through Athlete Leadership University, then kind of the third phase of our athlete leadership initiative is either as volunteer roles or in staff roles, find leadership positions for our athlete leaders. That's not token. And I'm not saying that we create one that's just for them. I'm saying that some of the vacancies that we have in our current structure of leadership is filled by athletes, that we don't automatically think of people without intellectual disabilities and don't give any consideration to our athletes, but we need to give them that consideration. So our first step in that direction is actually Ken Melvin, who is in Montgomery County. He has taken over as the Area 4 Director. He is for Indiana, he's the first area director to be an athlete. Again, we're not creating new positions for our athlete leaders to assume we're filling current vacancies with athlete leaders who have been trained and who are capable of handling the responsibilities of that job. So Ken's our first area director. It is a volunteer position, but Ken has already hosted his first event, and the majority of his management team to host the spring games, it was a track and field and swim meet back in one of the weekends in May. The majority of his management team were other athletes as well. So athletes are taking the time away from their own sports competitions to host events for their fellow athletes. We have athletes who are getting older. There's no mandatory age of retirement here in Special Olympics. We just find new ways that our athletes can stay involved. And that could be walking clubs, it could be bocce, it could be bowling, those sports that are less impact on the body. I'm getting older and I can't go out and run as fast as I did. And eventually I'll probably turn to walking myself. And if there's not a sports that interests them, though, we still want to be able to create avenues by which they can also give back. And we think that by training them up, by giving them a voice, and then giving them a role, we're really enhancing athlete leadership across the state of Indiana for Special Olympics Indiana. And in doing so, we're addressing a great need. I think every nonprofit organization will tell you what limits them as far as growth is usually finances and volunteers. I'm not sure that we can address with this, we can address the financial side of things, but we can certainly address the volunteers and the need for more volunteers. Instead of looking elsewhere, we should do that too. But we should also look inward to say, can some of these roles be filled by a competent, well-trained, well-mentored, and well-supported athlete leader? And that answer is absolutely yes. And we're going to prove that that can happen.
So, sorry, Shannon.
You're fine, go ahead.
So is there any new sports that you guys are thinking about bringing into Special Olympics that's not already there?
Yeah, it's kind of strange to think, but we for the past, we don't have a soccer program across the state. So soccer is our next venture when it comes to adding a new sport. And guess where that idea came from? Athlete leaders. So at Athlete Leadership University, I described the capstone, the leadership capstone class. And so we had a group of 5 athletes who were in their final class. They were all in the sports major. And the 5 of them came together and decided, we want the state of Indiana to start a soccer program because we all want to play it. How did they do that? They didn't just come up to us and say, we want soccer. They went out there so they took the class in October. They then in November met several times, excuse me, met several times. In December, we had our state bowling tournament. They walked around both facilities because we have it in 2 different places in Indianapolis, 2 sessions each. They went around and surveyed the athletes who were bowling. Do you want soccer, yes or no? Then they also then decided to survey the coaches, because it's one thing for a bunch of athletes to say, yeah, we want to do soccer. But what happens if you don't have any coaches? You don't have a team. So then they also found out that there was enough coaches who were interested in doing soccer to be able to support a soccer program. And that wasn't enough. They then created a PowerPoint presentation, because some of them took the technology class, way to implement some of the things that they've learned. Some of them have taken the public speaking class. So those who did the PowerPoint, they put the PowerPoint together. Those who took the global messenger class, they did the speaking parts. And they made a presentation in October, sorry, I'm getting my dates mixed up. They made a presentation in October of 2019, so a year later, to the Indiana Athlete Leadership Council. And they said, we want you to recommend to the Special Olympics Indiana State Office and the Special Olympics Indiana Board of Directors that we should start a soccer program. They made their presentation, they fielded questions from their fellow athlete leaders, and then at the end, they asked that the athlete leaders who were the representatives support their recommendation. And they did. And then it went to our staff, and our staff accepted the recommendation. Well, then COVID hit. So we haven't been able to implement what they asked for, because that was October of 19. And so we were hoping to be able to do something in June of 2020, but then COVID. And then we still haven't been able to get it off the ground because we're still trying to get out of the shadow of COVID. So it is still on our radar. Anytime that other people, outside groups or athletes have said, hey, Jeff, how about this sport? How about this sport? How about this sport? We've continued to deny any of those requests because we've already promised the Athlete Leadership Council, and then in particular, those 5 athlete leaders, that we would start soccer. We want to do that right. So that's our next sport. And it came from the athletes. That wasn't our idea at all. That came from the athletes. And so that's our hope, that as we continue to enhance our Athlete Leadership University, it will then help our athletes make great decisions and make great recommendations. And then our athletes go out there and help us implement it as well. So we're on the right track, and we're starting slow. I think that the next couple of recommendations will be even bigger and more impactful. Not that soccer isn't, but I think that we'll have even bigger, impactful recommendations from our athlete leaders here in the coming years.
Well, that seems like a good segue to talking about some of the sports that Special Olympics Indiana currently has, and how people can get involved in those sports in their local area and at the state level.
Yeah, so Special Olympics Indiana, we have over 20 sports that we offer. And if I'm pulling up my web address or our web address, it's just simply soindiana.org. I think you can see that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And if I click here, are you moving along with me? So we've got all our sports. Yep. Our sports are kind of categorized here by the big events. So Summer Games is our big one. And if you click here, you'll start seeing information on Summer Games that just took place. You see we live stream some of our events, results. And then other programming that we do from athlete leadership councils, registration on how local programs register their athlete leadership program. But then we've got the get involved button here and how to become an athlete. And then here's your information as far as the online application forms and all that. So if you see the application is online, is available from your county coordinator, that's in red if you can see that. And then here are all our local county coordinators in what county you're in. And then if I were to click on Gail or Ellen here, that'll fill in your email form so that you can write or type away an email address to our county coordinators and get involved. That's this site right here is the easiest way to get involved, unless you know the county coordinator directly or you have friends who are involved in Special Olympics, and whether you want to volunteer or become an athlete, this is the best and primary way to get involved.
Great. And are there any requirements or prerequisites to applying to the athlete leadership program or any of the other leadership opportunities Special Olympics has?
Sure. You have to be an athlete. So that means to become an athlete for us, you have to have a participation form and then also a medical. You have to go through a medical with your doctor. So it's the same as most sports organizations require that. To become an athlete leader does require your county coordinator to okay that as well. So the county coordinators know our athletes much better than I do. I get to know a good number of them, but I don't get to know all of them. So our county coordinators will know if somebody has the potential to be an athlete leader. Most of our athlete leaders come under the encouragement or from the encouragement of their county coordinator, actually, encouraging them to think about it. And so the forms then to come to Athlete Leadership University are filled out by the county coordinators. So they're the ones who kind of have to nominate you and then will encourage you. Sometimes county coordinators, though, may want to give it a year or so that they get to know you a little bit better, because they certainly want to make sure that you will be successful. That's kind of the good thing that's an important thing about being a coach. You want to make sure that you're putting your athletes in positions to become successful. You don't want to automatically put them in a position where they might fail. There are times where coaches will do that to push you, to stretch you, to make you better. But that's usually in the case that at that point in time, you may not be ready, but they know on down the road you will be ready. But there are some athletes who may never be ready for an athlete to be a leader, and that's okay. Not everybody in the world, not everybody's a leader. Some people are doers. They'll go do and do and do. They don't want to lead. I'm kind of like that sometimes too. I like to do things rather than lead all the time, but that's okay. Everybody, I think, in Special Olympics, though, can find their appropriate place that works for them, that helps them grow as an individual. And that's what we're there for, is to help every one of our athletes find themselves, who they are now, but then also grow so that they can be better than they ever were before. And that doesn't always happen through athlete leadership. It can happen in many other ways as well.
And I will note for those viewers who are watching on YouTube when we post this later, that link to the Special Olympics Indiana website will be posted in the comments. We'll be sure to share that if you're interested in getting involved through the website. Great. Sean, are there any questions you'd like to ask, or Jeff, anything else you'd like to add before we open it up to questions?
Well, I just think that our next venture then is unified leadership. Is kind of the next step of this whole journey for our athletes. Because one of the things that we're realizing in Special Olympics is that sometimes coaches or our local leadership or even our staff, we may protect our athletes too much. We don't want them to fail, and we don't want them to fail to the point that we hold them back. Unified leadership is training and an eye-opening and change to our mindset that is more intended for people like me, people like our board of directors, our staff, our local leadership, and not for the athletes themselves. Our athletes are capable of a lot of things. It's just the rest of us need to hold the athletes to high expectations and not get in their way. And that's some of our unified leadership training is for the rest of us, so that we can make sure that our athletes have all that they need from us, as well as we don't hold them back in any way. So that's kind of the next phase of what we're trying to do. We train up a good number of athlete leaders throughout each year, and we just need to make sure that once they graduate from our program, that there's meaningful roles for them waiting for them on the other side of graduation.
Sean, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I'm just gonna go on the Special Olympics of Indiana website and find my coordinator so I can join Special Olympics here.
Yes. Definitely encourage everyone to take advantage of that.
So what part of the city are you in, Sean, now?
Irvington.
Okay, yeah, you might be on the east side. Is that the east?
Yeah.
Yeah, good program there. We split the Marion County program into townships because it's pretty big. So we have a group that meets in Warren Township, so that's kind of your closest spot for you.
So at this time, if anyone has any questions, you can type those out into either the Q&A box or the chat box. You can also raise your hand in the attendees. I'm having the darndest time talking today. I'm so sorry, everyone. You can raise your hand as an attendee. Looks like Danielle's raising her hand, and I can promote you to a panelist, and you can come on screen and chat with Jeff like that. Hey, Danielle.
Hi.
Hey, Daniel.
I got a question for Jeff. What is your favorite sport to play?
For me, it's always been running, distance running in particular. So I always tell people that I'm only 5'7", so I tell people that I wasn't tall enough to play basketball or big enough to play football, and I couldn't hit a curveball to save my life. So the only thing that I was ever any good at was distance running. So that's what I do. I still run to this day.
Danielle, I know you're really involved in Special Olympics. Do you have a favorite sport?
Volleyball.
Nice. All right.
I actually can play volleyball, but certainly not up front at the net.
All right. Thank you so much, Danielle. I'm going to, one second. There it is. All right, and it looks like Eric also has a question. Should be popping up here shortly. Hey, Eric. If you're talking, you're on mute and we can't see you, just a heads up. Oh, there he is.
Hey, you hear me now?
Hey, Eric, yeah.
Hey, hey, I'm going to see Jeff again.
Oh, Jeff's here.
I'm right here.
I was to ask if I was a former athlete for I live in Bradford County, and I used to have special Olympics. I used to be doing bowling, and we lost the job. We lost the special Olympics in Hartford City, and I was wondering if I can get it back and be, instead of being an athlete, be a coach. I just know I can maybe do it, so I wanted to bring it back because I lost it and I liked it.
So, Eric, I think I heard you say that you're in Hartford County?
Yeah, Bradford County.
Blackford.
Blackford. Hartford City. That's right.
Yep.
Sorry. You're right. There's no Hartford County. I should know that. Yes, what we need, Eric, is we could certainly use your help to identify some people who want to help bring Blackford County Special Olympics back into existence. Then we have a regional manager. Her name's Julie. She lives in Fort Wayne.
Okay.
And Julie and that group can help get Blackford County back on the Special Olympics map. And
Okay.
if we do that, Eric, for the most
Yeah.
part, if you do the minimum requirements, like a background check and an application, you can be
Yeah.
a coach.
All right. Because I was, when I was actually a assistant coach for the Special Olympics, and I really liked it, and I really wanted to do it full time because I miss doing it, and that's why I want to get some information. But can you send me that person from Fort Wayne's email or phone number I can call up and ask for?
Yes. And to all of you,
Okay.
I am going to put her name into the chat room.
Okay.
And I know Eric is on his way home, so maybe Shannon can send that to Eric because he's on the
Yep.
van or the bus to go home.
I'll
Yeah.
be sure that gets to you, Eric.
Okay.
Her name is Julie Burkholder.
Okay.
Fantastic person to work with, so you'll enjoy working with her.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
And for anyone else who's interested in being a coach or getting more involved in maybe a non-athlete capacity like Eric was talking about, that's something else you can do through the website, correct? You can,
Yeah.
under Get Involved, there's a Become a Coach option. And
Yes. So if you want to become a coach or anybody who has a role with working directly with our athletes, though, there is a process. So there's an application to fill out, there's a background check to go through, and there's a couple online trainings. If you do it all in one setting, you should be able to knock it out in 45 minutes. It's a
Okay.
requirement because we certainly want to make sure that we know who's working directly with our athletes. We want to make
Okay.
sure they're good people. So that's why we have the background check.
All right. Cool. Yeah, I'll check in that.
thank you so
It's
much for
all,
your question.
that whole process is online, Eric, so it shouldn't be very hard as long as, and if you don't have a computer, our suggestion is, go to the public library or to a friend's house that does have a laptop.
I got a computer.
Cool. Cool.
Yep.
That's good. Thank you so much for your question, Eric. I think I have to go up here.
Hey, no problem.
All right, if anyone else has a question, again, you can type it in.
I do.
Yeah, please, John.
I'm from Grant County, and well, I live here now, but in Grant County, they lost there to area coordinator also. So it's Grant County and Blackford. So I'm not there anymore. So I don't know how that would work because they haven't identified anybody yet for that area.
Correct. So our staff was primarily focused on getting us through summer games and trying to get us through those games with COVID protocols. Now that we're past those games, it would still be Julie, but Julie now has time to start searching for the next county coordinator for Grant County. And the county coordinator and then a group of volunteers runs the county program. Some of those positions, just like I've been talking about, some of those positions can be filled by our athletes. And then we're also looking for community volunteers to step forward. They also can be moms or dads, but we're looking for volunteers to step forward to help get Grant County back up and running. As Sean knows, Grant County is one of our better programs, and it's usually one of our bigger programs. So to be without a Grant County program is something that we just can't tolerate much longer. We need to get that up and running again.
Yeah, let me tell you, I still talk to some people from there. They were upset because they couldn't go to summer games.
Yeah. Well, we'll make sure that they're back next year.
Sean, what was your favorite sport to participate in with Special Olympics?
Oh boy. When I could do it, it was basketball. But then when I started getting older and slower, it was bowling and bocce and cornhole.
Very nice. right, it looks like Kyle has a question, so we're going to promote Kyle, the panelist. Kyle, you'll have to, oh, yep, you got it. Oh, you're still on mute. You're still on mute, Kyle. Just a heads up. You're good now.
Hey Jeff,
What's up, Kyle?
what's up? I do Special Olympics for America County West.
All right.
I do swimming and basketball and softball.
Awesome.
And I like it so much. I missed summer games, but we couldn't go this year because of the COVID protocols and stuff. We'll be back there next year.
Well, be sure to look for you at the pool.
Yep.
We'll see you there. Well, I'll see
Okay.
you. How about I'll see you at softball, though, right? You said you play
Yep.
softball?
We started Monday, actually. Our program starts back Monday
right.
at June 21st. Next Monday, our program is restarting.
Awesome.
Thanks, Jeff.
No, thank you, man. Thanks, Kyle.
You're welcome.
Great. And just in case anyone doesn't know, you said that the sports that Special Olympics does generally follows the high school and NCAA calendar, correct? So
Yeah.
softball in the spring, swimming in the winter.
Yeah, there's a few things that are not quite in sync. Like high school softball they're concluding now, but this is when we start. But our basketball seasons are in sync. We play football in the fall.
I'm sorry, how do you decide what the summer games are then, since that's not a season in high school or college sports?
Well, the summer games is just 8 sports that we do the state championship in the same weekend. So
Gotcha.
we have track and field, swimming, horseshoes, volleyball, bocce, bowling, cycling, and powerlifting.
Gotcha. It's not its own season. That's just the summer games or the big event of the
Yeah,
summer.
it's a state championship event. So, and it's at the beginning of the summer, not really at the end of the summer. So, it in the 1970s when Special Olympics started, it was primarily students, students from all the schools in Indiana. Or majority of our athletes came from the school setting. So, kind of summer games was the end of the school year, kind of the celebration or kicking off the start of the summer. And we just found our little spot in the calendar in June, and we've stuck to it, even though we have as many adult athletes at summer games as we do youth, but we still have kind of kept it at the same spot. So.
All right. Well, I think that's probably a pretty good place to end, unless
Cool.
Sean or Jeff, either of you have anything you'd like to add? Great. Well, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much. I learned a lot, and I'm very impressed with the work you guys are doing. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate your time and willingness to come on and tell us about everything Special Olympics Indiana has to offer.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I appreciate
Thanks,
both
Jeff.
of you and inviting me to join you.
And for everyone else, be sure to keep an eye on the SAI Facebook page and our events page of our website, saind.org, for upcoming issues forums. All right.
Thank you,
Thank you all
Jeff.
so much. Thanks. Bye-bye.